Hans Products manufactures 30,000 units of part S6 each year for use on its production line. At this level of activity, the cost per unit for part S6 appears below. An outside supplier has offered to sell 30,000 units of part S6 each year to Hans Products for $21 per part. If Hans Products accepts this offer, the facilities now being used to manufacture part S6 could be rented to another company at an annual rental of $80,000. However, Hans Products has determined that 2/3 of the fixed manufacturing overhead being applied to part S6 will continue, even if the part were purchased from an outside supplier. Prepare a computation showing how much profits will increase or decrease if the outside supplier's offer is accepted. Let's begin by looking at our differential cost associated with making the product compared to buying the product on a per unit basis. Our direct material cost per unit is $3.60, and direct material, direct labor, and variable overhead are by definition avoidable cost. That is, if we do not produce the units, we will not incur the cost. So the direct material cost of $3.60 is relevant to our decision, as is the direct labor cost of $10 per unit and the $2.40 in variable manufacturing overhead. However, for our fixed manufacturing overhead, we are told that 2/3 of the cost will continue if the part is purchased from an outside supplier. Thus, only 1/3 of it will continue, or is relevant to our decision, as it is the avoidable part of our fixed manufacturing overhead. So the total differential cost of making part S6 internally is $19 per unit. And if we had no alternative use of our facilities, we would clearly rather make the part at $19 per unit than to purchase it from an outside supplier at $21 per unit. However, since we do have an alternative use for our facilities, we can rent them for $80,000 a year. We need to compare the total cost of making the product with the total net cost of purchasing from outside. Our total direct material cost is 30,000 units times $360 a unit, or $108,000. The direct labor cost is $300,000. Our variable manufacturing overhead cost is $72,000 in total, and our fixed manufacturing overhead, in terms of our avoidable fixed manufacturing overhead, is $90,000. So our total cost of making the product is $570,000, compared with the total cost of purchasing outside of $630,000, which is the $21,000 per unit times 30,000 units. However, if we purchase from an outside supplier, we can rent our facilities to another company and generate $80,000 in income. This is a savings, so the net cost of purchasing from an outside supplier will only be $550,000. Thus, the net advantage of purchasing the component externally is the difference between the $570,000 cost of making the component compared with the net cost of purchasing of $550,000. We have an advantage to purchasing of $20,000 in total.